For years, he was basically a ghost, a name whispered in fear, the leader of a violent empire that stretched across the globe. But who was the man behind the myth? Today, we're going to piece together the story of Nemesio Azuera Cervantes, the man they called El Mencho, and figure out what his death really means for the future of organized crime. And then, on February 22, 2026, the news just exploded. El Mencho, the founder and absolute leader of the feared Jalisco Cartel New Generation, or CJNG, had been killed in a military operation. I mean, after years of eluding one of the biggest manhunts in the world, his reign had finally come to a violent end. You want to know just how big a deal this guy was? Look at this number, $15 million. That was the reward the U.S. was offering for him. You don't put a price tag like that on just anyone. That's reserved for the absolute top tier, a clear sign that he was one of the most wanted men on the planet. So how did it all go down? Well, according to the official reports, his end was anything but quiet. A special forces unit tracked him to a really remote part of his home state, Jalisco. A crazy firefight broke out. El Mencho was hit, badly wounded while trying to make a run for it into the woods. He didn't die in some blaze of glory, though. He died in the back of a military vehicle on the way to a hospital. The reaction to his death, it was immediate and absolutely terrifying. The CJNG just unleashed hell. They threw up hundreds of what they call narco blockades, hijacking and burning buses, trucks, anything they could get their hands on to shut down the roads. Entire cities like Guadalajara were just paralyzed. It was a brutal, chilling display of the power he still had, even in death, kind of like a final defiant roar from a now leaderless empire. So this just begs the question, right? Who was this guy that his death alone could send an entire country into chaos? To really get a handle on the huge power vacuum he left behind, we gotta go back. We need to see how he built this whole violent enterprise in the first place. Okay, so this is where El Mencho's story gets really wild. It's this bizarre and frankly disturbing mix of law enforcement and crime. See, he wasn't born into some cartel dynasty. He built his own from the ground up, and he used what he learned on both sides of the law to do it. Just look at this career path. It's insane. He starts out as a small-time trafficker, does prison time in the US for it, but then, and this is the part that blows my mind, he comes back to Mexico and becomes a cop, a police officer. It was almost certainly from inside the force that he started building his network. He eventually leaves, joins the Milenio cartel, and then when that group splinters in 2010, bam, he sees his opening and creates his own organization, the Jalisco Cartel New Generation. And under his absolutely ruthless leadership, the CJNG didn't just grow. It was more like it metastasized. He took a small regional group and turned it into one of the most powerful and far-reaching criminal organizations on Earth, with tentacles stretching from Mexico all the way to markets in Europe and Asia. This number right here, 28. It tells you pretty much everything you need to know about how much power the CJNG had inside Mexico. That's how many of Mexico's 32 states they were operating in. This was no regional gang. This was a criminal empire with a national footprint, and they expanded at a speed that was just unprecedented. Now, this chart is key to understanding their power. I mean, sure, drug trafficking was their bread and butter, especially synthetics like meth and fentanyl, but look at how diversified they were. We're talking large-scale oil theft, extortion, human trafficking, even controlling migrant smuggling. El Mencho hadn't just built a cartel, he'd built a full-on criminal corporation with a whole portfolio of illegal businesses that made them incredibly rich and really, really hard to stop. And El Mencho wasn't afraid to use that power to go after the state itself. He's believed to have ordered the hits on high-profile politicians, like Jalisco's tourism secretary and even a federal congressman. He thought they were working with his rivals, and their murders sent a brutally clear message. Nobody is off limits. You get in his way, you pay the ultimate price. So you can probably guess what happens next, right? When you expand that fast and that aggressively, you're gonna make a lot of enemies. As the Jalisco cartel grew, it smashed right into other powerful groups, and that sparked a series of just incredibly bloody turf wars all over Mexico. And the main event, the real heavyweight title fight, was always CJNG versus the Sinaloa cartel. This sparked a nationwide war for control over everything: trafficking routes, ports, the lucrative migrant smuggling business. It was a total clash of titans.
You had the new school, aggressive, paramilitary-style CJNG against the old guard, the established Sinaloa cartel.
But listen, it wasn't just a one-on-one fight. To fuel his constant expansion, El Mencho was basically waging war on multiple fronts at all times. He battled this ever-changing list of local and regional cartels all over the country, from the Zetas and the Knights Templar early on to alliances like the Carteles Unidos in Michoacan later. The list of enemies just kept growing.
So that brings us to the really critical part. El Mencho is gone. What happens to this massive, violent, and incredibly complex organization that he held together basically by sheer force of will? Well, the CJNG is now facing huge threats, both from inside, with power struggles, and from the outside, with rivals who definitely smell blood in the water.
You know, even before he was killed, the walls were closing in. This timeline of arrests shows you just how systematically authorities were taking apart his inner circle. His son and heir apparent, extradited. His wife, who was allegedly the financial mastermind, arrested. His brothers, his son-in-law, all key players, all captured in the years just before his death. His entire support structure was just crumbling around him.
So El Mencho's death leaves this huge, dangerous power vacuum at the very top of the CJNG. Without that one undisputed leader, the cartel is facing a very real risk of just fracturing. His lieutenants are going to fight each other for control, and you can bet rival cartels see this as a golden opportunity to move in and seize territory. His death might not just destabilize the cartel, it could trigger a whole new, horrifying wave of violence across the country. And that right there, that is the critical question facing Mexico today. Will the death of El Mencho finally bring some peace, or will it unleash an even bloodier war for his throne? The fall of a kingpin, well, it rarely means the end of the kingdom. More often than not, it just marks the beginning of a violent and messy succession crisis. El Mencho's death closes one brutal chapter, but it may have just opened another, even more terrifying one.